have 12th ranked Oklahoma State currently undefeated at 5-0, taking on 25th ranked Texas, who is 4-2. Texas enters this game as of right now as a 5.5-point favorite. This game is going to be played on Fox with a 12 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. Now, Oklahoma State has lost their previous two matchups to Texas, so they're looking to end that streak this weekend. Oklahoma State is coming off a bye. The last time I remember seeing Oklahoma State play, they defeated Baylor in a pretty solid and entertaining matchup. Now, Mike Gundy, in his presser, their head coach for Oklahoma State, talked about how one of his biggest focuses going into this game for this Oklahoma State team was trying to limit the big plays of Texas and trying to contain quarterback Casey Thompson. And I definitely understand why, because Texas under Steve Sarkisian, their offense has been really explosive, as we saw last week against Oklahoma in the Red River shootout. It's called the Red River Showdown, but really that's what it was. It was a shootout. Texas had a lot of big explosive plays. I think that Texas, for their wide receivers last week, they played their best game out of the whole entire year. Like, the wide receivers for Texas were really impressive. And on top of that, Casey Thompson also had a really good game. That was probably the best game that he's played up to this point of his Longhorns career. B. John Robinson had a Heisman-worthy performance. He had a really big run that went viral when he made a lot of defenders miss. Like, Texas right now is peaking. I think Texas is playing some of their best football. And although this is a team that has a 4-2 record, like, I feel like this team has hit a ceiling, and I think they're playing at a really high level. Now, we do have to mention the fact that Texas defense looks to be non-existent. So if Texas is going to win this game and the remaining games that they have left on their schedule, they're probably going to have to outscore everybody, which is something that nobody's really new to when it comes to the Big 12. But something that I said the last time I talked about Oklahoma State is that this is an entirely different Oklahoma State team that we're accustomed to seeing, because normally when you think about Oklahoma State and you think about Mike Gundy, you think about offenses that are able to put up a lot of points on the board, not really having great defense, and throwing the football all throughout the air. Well, this is a different Oklahoma State team. Like, Oklahoma State over the last couple of years has kind of went through an identity change, because normally this is a team that likes to throw the football over the air. Now this is a team that is a little bit more run heavy. And this is a team that wins games playing great defense. And Mike Gundy was asked about this during his press conference earlier Monday, when people were trying to talk about the playing style of Texas, because, you know, Texas has been involved in a lot of high scoring affairs. Meanwhile, you have Oklahoma State, who's kind of been involved in more low scoring affairs. They like to win games with their defense. And Mike Gundy said, yeah, man, he doesn't want to get into a shootout with Texas. And I understand why, because Oklahoma State's offense has not really been all that great this year. Spencer Sanders hasn't really played all that great. Against Baylor, he was 13 of 23, 182 passing yards. He threw a touchdown and 3 picks. Like, he looked rattled. Like, Spencer Sanders hasn't really looked all that great. He hasn't really improved all that much. There were a lot of Cowboy fans who were heavily vocal and criticized his performance. So hopefully Spencer Sanders can get back in the right direction going against a Texas defense that isn't all that great. And also, with Mike Gundy alluding to the point that his offense isn't really built to get into a shootout, I think that is really important that Oklahoma State doesn't allow Texas to have a big first quarter and get out to a big lead early, like how they did last week against Oklahoma, because Oklahoma State, to me, isn't really a team that is built to come back from behind. And that may seem a little bit weird, because you think about Oklahoma State and what this team has done in the past. pass offensively. This team just really isn't there offensively. You know, I don't really know if it's a talent issue. The offensive line isn't really all that great. But I mean, you do have a pretty good running back in Jaylen Warren, and he's probably going to have a big game if you're going to look to win this game if you're an OK State fan. Now, on top of that, Texas run defense, you know, isn't really all that great. As a matter of fact, they allowed 339 rushing yards against Oklahoma last week. And you got to remember that Oklahoma has kind of struggled with the run game for the whole entire year. And they just came out of nowhere last week and they just laid a shellacking on that Texas run defense. And Texas is allowing nearly 200 rushing yards per game. They're 98th in rushing yards per game, and they're allowing 5.4 yards per attempt. So I definitely could see Jaylen Warren having a big game, but I also feel like Spencer Sanders is probably going to have a big game on the ground as well. Make sure that that rushing attack can open up things for the passing game and see if you can get some early shots when it comes to play action down the field. Now, if Oklahoma State gets down early, I feel like this game is pretty much going to be lost by that point, because then if they have to come from behind, that means they're probably going to have to abandon the running game, and they're probably going to have to try to throw the football to get back into it, which is a recipe for disaster, because Spencer Sanders hasn't really been all that great this year. So I don't really know how confident you would be if you're an Oklahoma State fan having to rely on him to throw you back into the football game. Now, Bijan Robinson is having a Heisman worthy season, and I keep stressing this, that Bijan Robinson as of right now is the best player in all of college football, and the Heisman Trophy is awarded to the most outstanding player in college football, which at least is the description that they give for the Heisman Trophy. And right now, I think it's fair to say that Bijan Robinson has been the most outstanding player in college football. When you think about a Heisman Trophy, you know, normally around this time you have a name that is really popular and everybody by this point knows who's going to win it, but this season hasn't really had that star who's broken out yet, who everybody has been like, yeah man, like, you know, he's it. You get what I'm saying? Last year was Devontae Smith, and it took a while for people to finally come around with Devontae Smith, because, you know, the Heisman Trophy normally is awarded to quarterbacks, not really skill position when it comes to wide receiver or even a running back all that often. But when you look at Bijan Robinson, I definitely feel like he is starting to cement himself as the best player in college football. And you look at the performance that he had last week against Oklahoma, like, I really feel like he deserves more talk to be in that Heisman conversation. As a matter of fact, I would go as far to say as Bijan Robinson is my front runner for the Heisman Trophy this year. And if Texas is going to have a chance of winning this game, it's going to come down to Bijan Robinson, because you're facing a very good Oklahoma State defense that's only allowing 2.8 yards per carry, which is 9th in the nation, and they have the 9th best run defense in college football, allowing 88 rushing yards per game. Now, even though Oklahoma State's offense has had their struggles, I really feel like they could put up some points against a really lackluster Texas defense that's been awful this season, allowing a lot of points. Or 79th in points per game allowed and 97th in yards per game allowed. So there's definitely the opportunity for Oklahoma State to put up some points in this game. And I really feel like if they can get that run game going and they can control the clock, keep Texas offense off the field and keep their defense on the field, I really feel like they can have a really good chance of winning this game. But overall, I'm going to take Texas to win this game. Now, Texas is a 5.5 point favorite, which I don't really know if this would be an upset because they're a favorite to win this game. But, you know, Oklahoma State is ranked higher. But I think that Texas is going to give Oklahoma State some problems. And that's why I'm taking them to win this game. Because, first of all, yeah, Oklahoma State has a great defense. But Oklahoma State hasn't shown me that they're able to sustain drives, which means that they're probably going to have a lot of 3-and-outs. I also don't trust Spencer Sanders. And if that run game isn't going, then you pretty much don't have anything to work with on the offense. So even though Oklahoma State's defense is good, I don't feel like their offense is going to give them too many breaks. And I eventually feel like Texas is going to be able to take control of this game late in the game because of the struggles that Oklahoma State could have offensively. And I know that Texas defense isn't great, but at the same time, you know, Spencer Sanders and this whole entire Oklahoma State offense outside of Jalen Warren hasn't really been on the same page. So I really feel like Texas is going to end up scoring some points. And although their defense is going to hold them, I eventually think that eventually Oklahoma State is going to eventually fold and Texas is going to win this game 31-17 is my final score prediction in this game. Well, I'm not going to say 17. I'm probably going to say Texas wins 38-27 because I will have a hard time seeing Texas defense hold anybody to less than 20 points. So I really feel like Oklahoma State will put up some points, but I just feel like Texas is going to end up breaking through in this game due to the struggles that Oklahoma State has had so far this season on the offensive side of the football.